With Chapter 2 Remix right around the corner, that essentially spells the end of Fortnite Chapter 5, if you can somehow believe it. And there's really no way around it. Chapter 5 was an incredibly divisive chapter. Half the people I talk to, it seems like, love this chapter, and half the people really hate it. So in this video, I kind of want to take a look back on the entirety of Chapter 5, talk about what they did right and what made this chapter so good, and what they absolutely whiffed on, what Epic Games did very poorly with Chapter 5, causing it to be, quite honestly, a very mediocre chapter. Of course, this video is entirely my opinion, and let me know in the comment section below what you guys think are the pros and cons of Fortnite Chapter 5. With that all being said, be sure to use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop. Make sure you get it in there before the new Battle Pass comes out in just a few short days, and make sure you're subscribed because I will have a ton of new content for the up-and-coming season. Without further ado, let's get into my final thoughts on Fortnite Chapter 5. So we're going to start this video on a positive note. We're going to talk about what Epic Games did right with Chapter 5, of course, in my opinion. And while this part of the video may be shorter than the part that discusses the negatives about Fortnite Chapter 5, that is not indicative of the chapter being bad, right? It's just naturally, it is easier to talk about things that they did bad than they did good. That's just the nature of life. And the first thing that I absolutely have to give kudos to for Fortnite for Chapter 5 was their mobility items. While yes, you may agree that some are more annoying than others, I mean, if you just go through every season of Chapter 5, you had a legit great mobility item in that season. In Season 1, you had Grapple Blade, Flowberry Fizz. In Season 2, you had Wings of Icarus, and of course the Green Skulls. In Season 3, you had Nitro Fists, and unfortunately, regretfully, those abomination of cars. In Season 4, you had the Iron Man Flight Kit, Hover Jets, Shockwaves, Shuri's Black Panther Claws, and of course, there's a couple that I missed in there, but those are really the main ones, right? And these were absolutely necessary to be in the game because I don't know about you guys, but the Chapter 5 map feels absolutely massive, and I will get into the map later on in this video. But there really is no argument here. The mobility items in Chapter 5 were extremely solid, and that's a trend that we've seen even in Chapter 4, right? With stuff like the Shockwave Hammer and the Rocket Ram. Their mobility items have been on point, and it always felt like you had a quick way to get from one point of the map to another, and that's always a good thing for the most part. And you'll see what I'm talking about later on in this video. I also wanted to briefly touch on Fortnitemares in Chapter 5 because I honestly think this is the best iteration of Fortnitemares we have ever seen. I feel like the last couple of Fortnitemare events over the years have felt very lackluster and almost afterthoughts, right? Rather than being their own dedicated event. And I can confidently say that was not the case at all with Chapter 5 Fortnitemares. They knocked it out of the park. You can tell this was a well thought out, well planned event years in advance. Not only did we get really cool, like kind of Halloween remade POIs. No, I am not dropping at Freaky Fields. But they also had really cool collaboration, fleshed out skins. You had Billy from Saw, you had Leatherface. I mean, there's so many more, but there's some iconic characters in Halloween movie history were added to this game, and I've seen them all around my lobbies. You got really cool Halloween themed items like the chainsaw, of course, which I know there's gonna be some argument on whether that's broken or not, but it's a fun item to use, right? The entirety of the green lake water all turned red. We got like the Billy bombs. I mean, such a goofy item, but I mean, again, the whole point of this is you can really tell this was a fully fleshed out event and not just an afterthought, which it kind of seemed like it was in the last couple of years. I will absolutely give them credit for Fortnitemares, drilled it 100% out of the park in Chapter 5. Also, let's talk about Fortnite Reload, and I guess in the greater scheme of things, just more options for players to play than just Battle Royale. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that, you know, Lego Fortnite or Rocket Racing or Fortnite Festival was like the saving grace of Fortnite, right? Absolutely not. And if you're anything like me, you actually probably touch those modes for maybe like a week and then never touch them again. And that's fine, right? It just didn't interest me that much, but that's not the case for everybody. And the point is, for the most part, more options to play is a better thing, and Fortnite Reload absolutely knocked it out of the park. I really am surprised that Fortnite Reload never happened sooner. I mean, COD did Rebirth Island all those years ago, and so it really just felt like a given to have a smaller map with less players and constant action rather than having to drop on this giant Chapter 5 map and not see anybody for 15 minutes. I don't know, like for me, I cannot stand not seeing anybody for 15 to 20 minutes and then coming in second place. I just can't do it. I want to fight all the time. And of course, there are opportunities to do that on the regular BR map, but Fortnite Reload, it's so quick. You're always on your feet. You're always moving. And the loot pool, in my opinion, is great. I mean, I know it's changed a couple of times, but I really enjoy being able to use some of those OG weapons that haven't come back in a while. The Mammoth Pistol is an entire other discussion in its own right, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? I think I can talk for a lot of people by saying that Fortnite Reload is a net positive for Chapter 5. And while the other modes feel a lot less entertaining to play, for me at least, I will give them credit for adding more fully fleshed game modes that for some people are enjoyable to play and add an entire different experience than just playing Battle Royale and shooting people. I also wanted to dedicate a little part of this video to the attachment system, and I actually think that this was a good thing for Chapter 5, but there are plenty of arguments that it's actually a bad thing. Some people will argue that the attachment system makes Fortnite kind of feel more like COD, right? Where you're picking up attachments off the ground. People are dropping in with custom loadouts, and I totally agree with that argument. I totally understand. But attachments are absolutely necessary in Chapter 5 because the weapons are not hit scan, and of course, you guys know me, I will get into that more later on in this video. I think the increase in customization is a net positive for the game. And overall, it really, in most cases, doesn't feel like there's one attachment that's like the end-all be-all, you have to have it or you can't compete. It feels like every attachment has a use and purpose for each different weapon, and that's how they intended it to be, and they did a good job with balancing attachments. My only real problem with attachments is just I hate how the weapons drop with like pre-assigned attachments. I can't stand that. I think it was so much better before Chapter 5 when you would see, I don't know, a green red-eye assault rifle on the ground, and it was just that, a green red-eye assault rifle, not a red-eye assault rifle with, you know, a fast mag, a suppressor, and a sniper scope on it. You get what I'm saying? Overall, I think with a little bit of fine-tuning, the attachment system could be very good. I know I have seen leaks for Chapter 6 that they are considering removing attachments as the weapons potentially could go back to being hit scan, but I don't know. I guess it's a discussion for a Chapter 6 video. And the final thing that I think Chapter 5 did really good was collaborations. And I want to put a little bit of an asterisk there because collaborations is a very vague term, right? You have collaboration skins and then you have collaboration items that actually affect the game. And yes, while there were some collaboration items that were absolutely busted, I'm looking at you know, water bending, the hover jets for the most part, War Machine's arsenal in some instances, like you guys get what I'm saying. For the most part, I believe that collaborations in Fortnite Chapter 5 were done correctly, right? I mean, there are hundreds of collaborations. It almost feels like it's a little bit overboard. Maybe you could argue that the collaborations are taking over too much of the game, and I would totally understand that argument. But I mean, for example, look at Chapter 5, Season 4. Look at that battle pass, right? Gwenpool, Mysterio, Captain Jonesy, Shuri. I would argue that that collaboration battle pass is better than any battle pass in the entirety of Chapter 5. And I think that right there kind of proves that people like what they are familiar with, and that's the reason why they keep adding collaborations. People really, really enjoy them, myself included. I also really enjoy the actual in-game collaboration, so stuff like the Magneto power in Chapter 5, Season 3, or, you know, Dr. Doom's Arcane Gauntlets in Season 4. All of these items I feel like had a positive impact on the game, and I know some people are going to argue they're a little bit spammy. Some of them are overdone, some of them are also underdone and totally useless. I'm kind of looking at you, Pirates of the Caribbean collaboration. Overall, I would consider the collaborations in Chapter 5 to be a good thing. Especially with the music. Adding in music tracks that you can purchase for V-Bucks, make your lobby music. I think that's a genius idea. And I don't know, they're stealing all my V-Bucks. Of course, using code TYFRYZ. But all right, let's move on to the part of the video that I'm sure most of you clicked on this video for. What did I believe Fortnite did wrong in Chapter 5? And yes, this is longer than the section of what they did right. First of all, I have to talk about projectile-based weapons rather than hit-scan weapons. To me, the Chapter 5 weapons just don't feel enjoyable to use at all. I cannot stand the fact that there are projectile-based weapons instead of hit-scan. It just makes the weapons feel so sloppy, so inaccurate, and it really makes the gunfights feel like more of a luck-based thing than a skill-based thing. I mean, there are times when I fired 10 to 15 striker AR shots in a row With my crosshair, I swear to God, literally right on him and not a single bullet hits, but somehow I get absolutely lasered back. It just creates some incredibly inconsistent gunfights, and to me, it just kind of ruins some weapons. I mean, in my opinion, you saw with the Stark Industry rifle, the Chapter 2 Season 4 version versus the Chapter 5 Season 4 version, one of them being hit scan, one of them not being hit scan. Totally night and day different weapons, in my opinion. Again, like, I have to reemphasize, it just creates sloppy gunfights. I cannot stand it. It is my biggest problem with Chapter 5, and I'm gonna stop the rant here because I'm sure my blood pressure's through the roof right now. But I saw that, yes, Epic Games has considered bringing back hit scan weapons in Chapter 6, and I'm just praying that they do that. Next, let's talk about a little bit of a less controversial topic, something I'll be a little bit more level-headed on. It's the storyline. I feel like Fortnite's storyline has always been a little bit convoluted, but recently it just feels totally non-existent, honestly. I just don't understand. Like, I have been following this storyline since the inception of the game, since the storyline was even created, really, with the Visitor. And at this point, it genuinely feels like you need to have 20 degrees in biophysics and engineering and mathematics and like quantum physics to even understand what is going on here. Beyond just the complexity of the storyline itself and the total monstrosity that it has become, I would argue that it's been kind of forgotten about. We rarely get any actual fully fledged out live events. We just get these like mini events in game that really don't have any impact on anything, it feels like. I don't get it. Like what happened to live events, right? This storyline at this point is kind of a disaster. I mean, I used to be really into it like 4 years ago, and at this point I can't follow along anymore. And not even just that, I'm just not interested. It feels just a little bit drawn out, and I'm hoping they can do something to revive this storyline because in my opinion it is dying quickly. I also want to briefly talk about the weapon balance this chapter because it almost feels like it's been all over the place. This chapter, more than, honestly, I would argue any chapter in Fortnite history, had the most broken weapons we had ever seen. I mean, even if you just want to go season by season, Season 1, the Reaper Sniper Rifle, unarguably the best sniper in Fortnite history, absolutely tormented that season. People weren't even running assault rifles. I was literally just running a Reaper Sniper Rifle with a P2X optic and a Frenzy Auto shotgun. That's it. The Frenzy Auto shotgun itself absolutely busted into oblivion. The Thunderburst SMG, it almost brings a tear to my eye talking about it, how good that SMG was. This is one of those SMGs that I think you could put in any season of Fortnite and it would be one of the best weapons in that season. And stuff like that just kind of creates like a mismatch in the loot pool because there were these weapons that were like auto not takes, like the Hyper SMG, for example. In my opinion, the Hammer Pump Shotgun was not viable in Chapter 5 Season 1 because everybody was using a frenzy. Stuff like, I don't know, the Huntress DMR in Chapter 5 Season 2, the Enforcer AR, the Nemesis AR. I just wasn't touching them because I was too busy using a Reaper Sniper Rifle. Even moving on to Season 2, we got the Gatekeeper Shotgun, which there are plenty of arguments to be had that the Gatekeeper Shotgun is probably the second or third best shotgun we've ever gotten. In my opinion, blows the Hammer Pump, the Sovereign Shotgun totally, completely out of the water. It's not even really close. In Season 3, I'm not really going to get into it. The cars were an absolute nightmare. Nitro Fists were extremely overpowered on launch. Season 4, the hover jets were literally, for the majority of the season, an automatic hold in your inventory. It was literally like you had an inventory slot just designated for the hover jets and another one for the Gatekeeper shotgun. Look, like, I entirely understand that every season there are going to be weapons that are going to stand out and just naturally be better than others, but I feel like in Chapter 4, it wasn't just weapons that were good. It was weapons that were blatantly overpowered. I mean, I honestly even forgot to mention water bending in Season 2. As you can tell, this video is off script. I'm just totally going off the brain here. But again, just weapons that were overpowered must-takes, and it just totally dilutes the loot pool because there's like half the weapons that aren't even viable to use. Next, I have something that's very niche here, but I think it's got to be talked about. Let's talk about the UI, the item shop, kind of like the art style, all of it as a whole. First of all, the Chapter 5 UI needs an entire entirely new overhaul. It is a mess. Like, good luck going to try and like search up for a creative map for the first time if you just hopped back into Fortnite for the first time in a couple years. Good luck, right? The UI is out of control. I miss how simple it used to be. It is so overcomplicated, and I really pray with Chapter 6 it gets an entire new overhaul, because I can't stand this UI. And talking about overcomplication, we got to talk about the item shop. And I understand this is not a Chapter 5 problem. This has been a problem in Fortnite for a couple years now. And I guess I do see the business aspect of this decision to continuously keep adding more and more and more pages into the Fortnite item shop as the game got more collaborations and became more popular, right? But do you guys remember when it literally just used to be 2 skins, like an emote, a glider, a pickaxe, and that's all we got until the next item shop? Now it's like you have to scroll through 20 pages of the item shop. I'm telling you, you cannot make this up. The item shop is out of control. And I'm not arguing for less options in the Fortnite item shop. I understand it is a better thing to have more options for things to buy. I totally get it. It's more like just navigating it is a total disaster and just adds to this overcomplication of the game that, to me, doesn't need to happen. And in terms of the art style, I can tell Chapter 5 went with more of a realistic looking game than a cartoony looking game that we saw for years and years with Fortnite that really gave it its identity. And I would actually argue that's one of the main overarching problems with Chapter 5 is it really lacks character and identity. I don't know. I just feel like the art style looks kind of dull. Like, I do know there are some POIs that look really nice with these graphics, but for the most part, I would argue that when you land on the map, it just looks dull. There's not a lot of color. There's not a lot of excitement. There's not a lot of stuff going on. It's just kind of boring. And I feel like this ties into one of my main points in the bad section of Chapter 5. It's kind of the map. I know there's like a big sentiment of this online, and I actually would agree with it. It almost feels like the POIs just kind of blend into one. Like, there's no character to each location. It really feels like I'm either in a mansion, a Greek location, or a farm, right? It feels like I'm in one of those 3 all the time. Of course, there's a couple of exceptions. Stuff like the Nitrodrome, right, is a really cool POI, and that's an example of one that has character and has identity to it. I mean, go back to really any chapter. Chapter 2, the rig, the shark, the agency. These are our POIs that all have a unique feel and a unique vibe to them. Whereas in Chapter 5, it almost feels like every POI is the same and kind of plays the same way. I feel like you can go back and look at each chapter of Fortnite and pick out a couple POIs that stand out, that were exceptional. But honestly, I feel like Chapter 5 kind of struggles to do that. As a whole, I feel like this map is just way too big, very forgettable, and I think looking back on it, this map is not going to be remembered very fondly by a lot of people. I have to also dedicate a small sliver of this video to the atrocity that was Chapter 5 Season 3. Any avid watchers of this channel know that my least favorite Fortnite season and least played Fortnite season was Chapter 2 Season 6, the Primal season. I'm not going to go into it because I hate it so much. But Chapter 5 Season 3, in my opinion, almost entirely dethroned Primal for my least favorite Fortnite season ever. Just what a total nightmare. It almost feels like every chapter of Fortnite has like a stinker season, right? Chapter 1 Season X, Chapter 2 Season 6, Chapter 3, I don't know. I'd probably argue the Chrome season was at Season 4, I think. Chapter 4, obviously Season 3, and Chapter 5, without a shadow of a doubt, was Season 3. Even if you go back to my channel at the time, like, there was no videos being made about Chapter 5 Season 3. It was all, like, just ranking content, not even ranking stuff within the new season. It was all just, you know, random ranking stuff, because that's the only content that I could do at that time. I really cannot stand this season for so many reasons. I'm not going to get into the cars, the broken Nitro Fist, the desert biome that kind of sucks, right? Magneto power and Nitro Fist as a whole. Look, I'm not going to get into it, but I really do not like this season, and leaves a horrible taste in my mouth for the middle of Chapter 5. How about we also next talk about medallions, because this was obviously a new feature that was introduced in Chapter 5, and I do feel like they kind of missed with medallions. It feels like they had to do a quick 180 from their original view of medallions. If you remember in Chapter 5 Season 1, medallions would just regen your shield, and as you stacked more medallions, your shield would stack more and quicker once you weren't taking damage, and then of course you would be revealed on the map with the more medallions that you carried. And they were so broken, they were so absolutely strong that medallions were a must carry if you wanted to win a game of Fortnite. And it got to a point in season 1 where if you were going up against somebody with 3 or 4 stacked medallions, good luck. It was almost an infinite loss. There was no chance. And then they totally did a 180 by giving medallions like special abilities. But in my opinion, it just created this dynamic where there was one medallion that was obviously the best in Chapter 5 Season 2. Was it Cerberus' medallion that would give you the infinitely recharging skulls? Just these medallions that feel infinitely better than the others, and there's almost no point to carrying some of the other medallions. I mean, even in Chapter 5 Season 4, we're obviously seeing that the Mysterio medallion, awful, almost makes you worse at the game. And Emma Frost's reveal medallion is by far the best medallion this season. There's no real argument there, in my opinion. Honestly, what I'm saying here is that if medallions go with Chapter 6 and we don't see them again, I don't honestly think I'm going to miss medallions that much. And the final thing I want to touch on at the end of this video, where I think Fortnite went wrong, was the lack of LTMs in Chapter 5. And I will note here that this is not just a Chapter 5 problem. This has been an ongoing problem, and part of me wonders if the addition of like Fortnite Festival and all these other modes is what's hindering bringing back LTMs, since LTMs used to be a different way to play Battle Royale, but now we have so many different options to play the game that LTMs just don't exist, really. This is obviously like a entirely personal choice here. This is not something directly attacked at Chapter 5, but more so in general, just a Fortnite problem. I don't know. I hope with Chapter 6, we see the return of some LTM stuff like the floor is lava, the getaway, those things that players really enjoy and are a different change of pace from the typical Battle Royale. So yeah, guys, those are really my final thoughts on the entirety of Fortnite Chapter 5. Do I think that it was a good chapter? No. Do I think it was a bad chapter? No as well. I would actually argue it's somewhere in the middle. I think it was a decent chapter, but I could see those feelings changing months down the road as we look back onto Chapter 5 without being in it in the current moment. It's certainly not the best chapter of Fortnite we've ever had, but I would also argue it's not the worst chapter we've ever had in Fortnite. It's decent. If you went on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like. I know it's different than my typical Fortnite videos, but I like to switch up the content sometimes on the channel here. Be sure to subscribe for Chapter 2 remix content, as it's just coming up right around the corner. Anyways, with that all being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.